Well, for the past couple of days, I have been here in Louisville, Kentucky at a big military show called the Show of Shows. And while we were here, I thought that we would take a little bit of time before we go home to maybe dive into some of the local history here, listen to some of the road noise on the bridge, and maybe visit a few famous graves, including the grave of one of our presidents. Alright, now like I said, Louisville, Kentucky is the final resting place of one of our presidents, who we will get to later, but it's also the final resting place of a couple of other well-known figures, one of whom is considered to be the greatest boxer of all time, and that of course is Muhammad Ali. Now you might be asking yourself, JD, if we're talking about the grave of Muhammad Ali, why in the heck are we on this loud bridge? Well, there's a story with this bridge that is connected with Muhammad Ali. This is the 2nd Street Bridge right here. So Muhammad Ali started boxing, I think at around age 12, and at age 18 competed in the 1960 Summer Olympics in Rome, and did well and ended up getting the gold medal. Well, there was a story that he told that when he got back to the United States, well, he was denied service at a whites-only diner, and was so frustrated and was so angry that as an act of protest, he came out here to the 2nd Street Bridge and threw his medal into the Ohio River. Now, later, that story was called into question, and it seems that maybe it's more likely that he just lost the medal, which, my gosh, how do you lose an Olympic gold medal? I don't know. But anyway, the story that he told is associated right here with the 2nd Street Bridge. So if anybody is ever out here fishing and you happen to pull up a gold medal, well, let me know. All right. So we're going to get off of this loud bridge and go see if we can find the grave of Muhammad Ali, among some others. All right, we've moved now to Cave Hill Cemetery, which is the final resting place of Muhammad Ali. And of course, I know this goes without saying, but Muhammad Ali's birth name was Cassius Clay. So in 1960, after he won the gold medal at the Olympics in Rome, well, he came back and turned pro and really had an impressive run. And then at the age of 22, let's see, I think this was in 1964, he took on the world heavyweight champion, Sonny Liston. Now, another thing about Muhammad Ali, or Cassius Clay at the time, rather colorful, flamboyant individual, and became known for kind of his antics outside the ring, and for really his mouth as much as his fists. And he said some pretty terrible things, but kind of funny about Sonny Liston. He said he called him a big ugly bear, and said that after he beat him, he was going to put him into the zoo, and really kind of riled him up. But he ended up beating Sonny Liston and became, that time, the youngest heavyweight champion to have defeated another heavyweight champion and earned the title. All right, anyway, going up here right now to the grave of Muhammad Ali. All right, well, right here is the final resting place of Muhammad Ali, who Sports Illustrated in 1999 named the sportsman of the century, the greatest boxer of all time. So anyway, I'm a huge fan of boxing, you know, Jack Johnson, Jack Dempsey, and everything like that. So I've watched a lot of Muhammad Ali's fights, and man, he had some epic battles in the ring. So in 1966, he was called up for the draft and refused to serve, and as a result was banned from boxing for a period of time. Ended up coming back in 1971, but had really kind of missed out on the prime years of his life as far as boxing goes in his late 20s. Here you can kind of read what they have written on his stone here. But anyway, his 3 fights against Joe Frazier are incredible. So in the first fight, he lost to Frazier by unanimous decision in what was called the fight of the century, and that was his first professional loss. And then came back and won the second fight, and then in the third fight won by TKO in the 15th round. And said that third fight against Frazier was, he said it was as close as he had ever come to dying. And somebody suggested, you know, or asked him if he had watched the tape, and he said, why would I want to revisit hell? And intermixed in there, he also had the rumble in the jungle against George Foreman. George Foreman was a monster of a boxer at that time, just absolutely fearsome if you see some of his knockouts. And Muhammad Ali ended up defeating him. Again, the rumble in jungle in Zaire. But anyway, yeah, right here is the final resting place of Muhammad Ali. And right up here they have another marker or memorial stone, and it says, Ali, service to others is the rent you pay for your room in heaven. All right, got another one here that we're going to go take a look at. Well, here's somebody else who is buried here at Cave Hill Cemetery that I'm sure you'll recognize. Colonel Harlan Sanders, who was the founder of Kentucky Fried Chicken. So Harlan Sanders was born in 1890 and died in 1980. As you can see here, it says founder of Kentucky Fried Chicken Empire, and died in Louisville, Kentucky in December of 1980. So Harlan Sanders, this guy had an interesting life, and was, the image that we have of him is like later in life where he's kind of this friendly old man who's serving up chicken to people. This guy had a pretty rough and tumble life and was known for being a bit of a brawler. Something that's kind of interesting about him, in 1906, when he was 16 years old, he lied about his age and joined the army and served as a teamster in the Philippines. And then he had a number of different jobs. He worked for the railroad. He was a lawyer for a while, and then he got into a brawl with one of his clients, and that destroyed his reputation. And then during the Depression, well, he started this roadside diner and developed a new method for making fried chicken, where he pressure fried it so it would cook faster than pan frying. And then, yeah, just built this chicken empire. Ended up franchising it, I think, in the 1950s, maybe 1952, 1954. And then in the 60s, after he'd gone international, you know, he's, you know, in his 70s by this point, he ended up selling to some investors, but remained as a brand ambassador. But yeah, right here's the grave of Colonel Sanders. As I've mentioned multiple times on this channel, one of my goals is to visit the grave of every single U.S. president. We've visited the graves of, let's see, Washington, Benjamin Harrison, Polk, Tyler, let's see, James Monroe. There have been several, Kennedy and Taft. There's a playlist where you can see all the presidential graves that we've gathered. We've now moved to Zachary Taylor National Cemetery, and you'll never guess who is buried here. Our 12th president, Zachary Taylor. We're going to get to the grave of Zachary Taylor here in just a moment, but first I wanted to show this. This is a monument that was erected in 1883 to Zachary Taylor. It stands 50 foot tall, and if we walk up here, you can see that he was born in 1784. He dies July 9th in 1850. And right over here, well, you can see that Taylor's a military man. These are some of the major battles that he was involved in. So Taylor, he fought in the War of 1812. He was also in the Black Hawk War and in, I think, the Second Seminole War. But where he really makes a name for himself is in the Mexican-American War. So in 1846, Polk sends Taylor down to the Mexican border, where, long story short, they end up engaging with the Mexican army, and Taylor scores some pretty impressive victories, in some cases against overwhelming odds. So one of the major battles that he was involved in, well, he was at Palo Alto and also Resaca de la Palma. But he ended up having a successful campaign, or successful battle rather, against Santa Anna at the Battle of Buena Vista. And this is really going to propel Taylor into the spotlight. And the press started making comparisons between Taylor, to men like George Washington and Andrew Jackson and other generals who had gone on to become president. All right, so we're going to go down here to the mausoleum that holds the remains of General Taylor. Now, Taylor wasn't really interested in politics at all. As a matter of fact, prior to the election of 1848, he had never even voted. So anyway, he ends up signing on with the Whig Party, but made it clear that he was going to be more of an independent. And he was going to be mainly running against a guy named Lewis Cass, who was a Democrat. Something that's kind of interesting is Taylor is the last man to have been elected president who was neither a Democrat nor a Republican. Now, after he dies, Fillmore is also a Whig, so he's going to be the last person who was neither a Democrat nor a Republican. But in every election since 1852, we've had one of those two parties. Taylor was the last non-Democrat or non-Republican. We're going to move up here and see if we can get a look inside. I need to adjust my lighting. Kind of hard to see, but anyway, that's Taylor on the left, and then we can see his wife, Margaret, or rather her resting place here on the right. I don't know a whole lot about his wife. I do know that they had a daughter who married Jefferson Davis. Unfortunately, she died about 3 months after they got married. Jefferson Davis is later on going to become the president of the Confederacy. Now, Zachary Taylor, as president, is going to have to wrestle with the same issue that so many other presidents had to wrestle with, and that is slavery and its expansion. Now, Taylor himself was a slave owner, had like well over 100 slaves, but when it came to the expansion of slavery, he was more in favor of, states deciding for themselves. That angered the Southerners to the point where they were talking about secession. Now, keep in mind, this is like 1848, 49, 1850. This is well before the Civil War. And Taylor wasn't having any of it. Even though he was a slave owner, he said that anybody who tried to secede from the United States, there was going to be some pretty heavy force that was going to be laid down on them. He said that any persons taken in rebellion against the Union, he said that he would hang them with less reluctance than he had hanged deserters and spies in Mexico. So this is a man who's taking a very hard line and is really kind of living up to what he said when he said that he was going to run as an independent. Okay, I'm going to move back here to this other spot. Now, what we're getting ready to look at, this is the original place where Zachary Taylor was buried. So Zachary Taylor is going to be the second person who dies in office, the first being William Henry Harrison. On July the 4th of 1850, there had been like this fundraising event where they were raising money for the Washington Monument, and it was said that he had a lot of cherries and ice milk, and or iced milk, and then anyway, the next day or a few days later started having these terrible abdominal pains, and ended up dying on July the 9th. All right, we're gonna walk back over here. Now there was some speculation that because of his stand against the Southerners that maybe he had been poisoned. In 1991, his body was actually exhumed and tested to see if they could find any traces of arsenic or poisoning or anything like that, and they didn't find any such thing. But anyway, yeah, very, very interesting man. Again, a man who owned slaves, but was having none of the secession when it was brought up, and was willing to violently put it down. So people who say that the Civil War wasn't about slavery, boy, you've got a long history before that you have to explain. All right, well, there you go. That was the final resting place of our 12th president, Zachary Taylor. So anyway, another one that we can check off the list. If you want to see some of the other presidential sites and presidential burial places that we've been to, you can check the playlist that is linked in the description. For now, we're going to go ahead and shut the camera off and head on to the next place. If you liked what you saw here, YouTube seems to think that you'll like this next video as well. So be sure to click on the link, and also be sure to subscribe to catch all of the future content when it comes out.